Okay, boys and girls, I guess we have been schooled. Anyone, any Catholic who dares to believe that Benedict actually remained Pope, that he never resigned the papacy as such, he never resigned the office as such, but simply gave up the active exercise of the ministry has been shown to be the total idiots that we totally are. Again, I'm not saying I'm 100% into being believing that Benedict was always the Pope, and thus Jorge Bergoglio is not. He's just the Bishop of Rome, a bishop of the Diocese of Rome, the administrator of the Apostolic See until the real Pope comes in after him. Well, I would say 90% Benedict never ever resigned the papacy, the office. He resigned, as he himself says, the active exercise of the office, but he never resigns the office. He resigns the active exercise of the ministry, but he does not resign the ministry. Repeated by Gänswein explicitly that he has never abandoned the office of Peter, which would have been absolutely impossible for Benedict to do after his irrevocable acceptance of the office in 2005. And that's what Gänswein, the personal secretary of Benedict for 50 billion years, has said. So, but we're idiots, we're stupid, we don't understand anything. So let's go ahead and be wowed by the wisdom of Stephen O'Reilly, who has, I guess, his own little website, Roma Lacuta Est. So Rome speaks, actually, he means Jorge Bergoglio says, invents a new doctrine. So we run around and obey it because Jorge, or whoever happens to be the Pope, according to him, is the very voice of God. He is a walking divinity. So he can banish the death penalty, call it against the Gospels. He can, I don't know, invent ministries out of thin air. That's fine. He can suppress the ancient apostolic liturgies. That's great. He can introduce Mayan, Aztec, pagan rites into the mass. That's fine, fantastic. It is the voice of the spirit we're listening to here. But here's his article: Whither Benepapism. Whither Benepapism. So let's go through the article, and of course we are going to debunk the debunk. Again, I'm not saying, believe me, I'm not saying 100% Benedict was always Pope, but it seems to me that he never truly resigned the papacy, and as such, Francis is not Pope. What are you going to do? Are you a sede vacantis now? There was no Pope since the 1940s or 50s? No. Well, now Benedict is dead. The Pope is dead. He actually got buried as a Pope in the papal crypt with his papal name, Benedict, by Francis, the Bishop of Rome. So that should say plenty. Now, when Francis, the administrator of the See of Rome, resigns or dies or whatever, and then they elect a successor, that should be the undisputed, the one and the only, because there can only be one Vicar of Christ, Pope of the Catholic Church. Anyways, let's go through the article because I don't want to waste too much time. Alrighty. So, after months of the death of Benedict XVI, those who claim to be that he remained Pope till the end, the so-called Benepapists. Everybody invents these terms: Benepapist, Beneplanist, Benecediba. I don't know what all this stuff means. They just invent terms out of, well, let's call them Frankie Papism. We mean Jorge Papism. Whither Jorge Papism? Well, let's invent that one too. It's like whatever. Fine. The two main camps. There is no real two main camps. Well, I guess some idiots try to nitpick and pretend to be. The two main camps for me are one and the same. I would fall into both camps. The two main camps of the Benepapism include those who believe Benedict made a substantial error, well, in his resignation, in that they claim that he erroneously believed he could bifurcate the papacy, uh, bifurcate the meaning split the papacy, or retain the papal munus, the office, in some way. And that's exactly what Benedict himself says that he, yeah, he resigned the active exercise, but, in some way, he actually says that in some way, in a manner of speaking, I still remain in the office of Peter, in the enclosure of Peter. That he says that right out out for you. And Gänswein, his personal secretary, in 2016, republished in a book, I believe, in 2020, in the article, he says that Benedict did not resign the office. He expanded it actually in a contemplative and a man and a an active ministry, he created a quasi, what did he call it, a quasi, we're going to go over it, a quasi shared ministry, a quasi shared office, an expanded Petrine office. Of course, Benedict has no power to do that because he is not God. Christ designed the office, as the Code of Canon Law itself says, uniquely upon Peter and Peter alone. So, but anyway, so yeah, okay, fine. See, the deceiver, whatever. Anyways, this rendered Benedict's resignation invalid through substantial error, according to per Code 188. They claim. All right, let's have a look at Code 188. Here it is: a resignation. A resignation. So it doesn't matter what kind of ecclesiastical resignation, made out of grave fear, and there was a lot of fear. The banking system shut down in the Vatican. There were threats against Benedict. Martini basically told him, you have to resign. There's a whole bunch of stuff that is inflicted unjustly or out of malice. Okay. Then there is substantial error. Well, maybe I can remain Pope, wear white, still be called Pope, and have my papal name, Benedict, till the day I die, be buried as Pope in the Vatican. Uh, but somehow I resigned the active exercise, so I gave up the power for governance, but I remained in the enclosure of Peter and somehow in the powerhouse of prayer, or whatever. So yeah, that's a grave error. Yeah, you cannot have an expanded Petrine office because the Petrine office does not belong to you, Benedict, to expand or diminish. So that's substantial error or simony. So what if any of these things happens? This resignation is invalid by the law itself. So it doesn't need me to say it's invalid. It is invalid by the law itself. So that's Code 188, which our little author here, the genius, tells us about. Okay, so the other camp, oh my God, there's a second camp? I had no idea. Believes Benedict created a self-impeded sea by intentionally, so they watch a lot of James Bond movies, I guess, intentionally resigning the administration of the papacy while retaining the papacy itself. Well, actually, that's exactly what he did. He intentionally resigned the administration of the papacy. Benedict himself, as we will see, and I'm repeating myself if you watch any of my videos on the subject, he himself said that he is giving the power for governance. But even though he gave up the power for governance of the church, he, referring to his 2005, where he's going to refer to it here, election, the always and forever of the accepting of the Petrine ministry, this giving up the power for governance does not revoke this. His acceptance is, as Gänswein says, irrevocable acceptance of the office in 2005. Um, so, okay, ooh, big deal. So you actually, yeah, that's exactly what happened. This Benedict, they say to save the papacy from the modernists. Okay, ignore that little James Bond conspiracy stuff, but that's exactly what he did. He wanted to expand the ministry, the office of the Pope, of the papacy. He wanted to remain Pope. He wanted to remain called Pope. He wanted to live in the Vatican. He was buried as Pope, and um, uh, but he wanted to give up the administration of the office, but he'd never give up the office. Otherwise, he would have taken off the white cassock, wore a black cassock, and went back to Germany. Wrote books, lived in a monastery, played his piano, petted his cat. You know. Um, uh, all right, so these are the two so-called two what do you call them? Camps. Not really. I mean, for me, I'll be in both camps. uh, Thus, one is left to making an odd choice. Either Benedict was a strategic genius or a theological fool. No, he was a modernist, a progressive theologian, and that's what brought him to the fore at Vatican II. He became more conservative as the years passed by, but the core essence of Benedict remained, as if the papacy is his plaything. But he himself said the Pope is not an absolute monarch whose mere will is law. But of course, Jorge Bergoglio, aka Francis, the Bishop of Rome, thinks his word is divine. Um, Actually, above the Gospels itself, above the Old Testament, where God Himself commands the execution of murderers for the spilling of the blood of man. But for Jorge, he has more respect for human dignity than the God who actually made humans. All right, okay, fine. So, an example of the seeming conundrum arises from Benedict's greeting to some pilgrims just a couple of hours before his resignation went into effect on February 28th, 2013. He said, I think Antonio Soschi says, like as soon as they accept, if you're resigning, it's an instant resignation. You cannot say, well, I'm going to be resigning in 2 years now. I'm going to be Pope for 2 years and then I'm going to resign. No, it's you're resigning, you're abandoning the office right then and there. So, anyways, Antonio Socci has the book, you can read it. It's called Benedict, Was He Still Pope or something like that. I did a bit of review on it. He said at 8 p.m. on that evening, I am no longer the supreme pontiff of the Catholic Church. No, okay, wow. Benedict actually said that. I'm no longer the supreme pontiff of the Catholic Church. So what does that mean, genius? Oh, ordinarily, common sense. Of course, we have no common sense. Common sense should dictate that this is a clear statement that Benedict's intent and understanding, he would no longer be pope in any sense. Oh wow, where did he get that from? Yeah, he himself said he is no longer the supreme pontiff of the Catholic Church because he, meaning the supreme pontiff, is the pontiff for governance. And he himself says on his last audience, while still pope, that he is giving up the power for governance, but he remains. We're going to go over it again. So no big deal. And by the way, buddy, Jorge Bergoglio, your pope himself, gave up the title of Supreme Pontiff of the Catholic Church. Actually, my one video, which I don't know how many people watch that thing. I don't know, 73,000, 72,500. That was in 2020. Jorge Bergoglio basically says, call me Jorge, Bishop of Rome. He himself relegated in the papal yearbook the titles of Vicar of Jesus Christ, successor of the Prince of the Apostles, Peter, Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church. So these three intrinsic papal titles of his function, of who he is, as footnotes, as historical titles in another page. He, Jorge himself, Bergoglio, gave them up. He does not acknowledge them. He doesn't want to be called Supreme Pontiff. He doesn't want to be called Vicar of Christ. He doesn't want to be called successor of the Prince of the Apostles. Nope. These are historical titles which were relegated as historical titles by Jorge himself, your so-called Pope. All right, let's continue here. Am I recording? I think so. I hope so. Anyways. All right. So What does he continue here? Oh, yeah. I'm no longer okay. Yeah, okay, fine. Uh, so of course he insults us. Of course, insults. I'm saying us. I mean anybody who has a doubt about Francis's election as pope. And of course, you see the picture behind me, Jorge. Oops, Jorge Bergoglio. After his chosen cardinals, every single time he chooses cardinals, he brings them to Pope Benedict. He presents them to Pope Benedict. He kisses the hands and fingers of a ring of Pope Benedict in front of Gänswein. You see the guy in purple there. That's who the Gänswein we've been talking about. He was working for both men. Um, and Pope Benedict with Jorge, both simultaneously. First of all, you see all the newly elected cardinals come and kneel before Benedict, kissing his hand and kind of just shaking hands with Francis. And then at the end, they bless them. So basically, Benedict approved every single cardinal election while he was alive because Francis brought them to him. I will see if he actually Francis will try to. I think there's way more cardinal than is allowed at the moment for a papal election, but we'll see what happens if he tries to appoint even more after that. But so people say, oh well, it's Francis, he's not the Pope. For those who say that, oh, all the cardinals are null and void. Well, he actually brought, if you still believe Benedict was Pope, he brought them to Benedict. Basically, Benedict gave him the authority for governance, and he brought them and presented them to Benedict, and Benedict greeted them and blessed them, meaning he approved of the selection. All right, let's continue. So of course, those who harbor these doubts have common sense should have put a brake on such nonsense long ago. We speak nonsense. Of course, now he's promoting his garbage book. Stephen O'Reilly, my garbage book, how I debunk the Beneplanis, the Benedictist Pope people. Alrighty. Uh, and then he goes into the Munus versus Ministerium. And you people, if you watched enough, you know what I'm talking about. Munus versus Ministerium. As the office versus the ministry. Is there a difference? Because Benedict never resigned the office. He said, I'm going to resign the ministry of the Bishop of Rome. And then actually he explained what he meant at his last audience after his declaratio, his declaration that hey guys, I won't be pope in like 2 months or by the end of February or something like that. For the time being, I'm pope, okay, alrighty. Well, that doesn't work, but anyways, let's pretend it does. He actually explained what it means. He said, well, I'm actually giving up the active exercise of the ministry. I'm not giving up the ministry. He said, the active exercise of that. So I really don't have the power for governance anymore. But he didn't say, I'm no longer Pope. I gave up the office. I'll wear my black cassock and go back to Germany and be called Josef Ratzinger again. Never happened. All right, so Munus versus Ministerium. So he says this seems to be like a in his declaratio, Benedict declared that he renounced the ministry of the Bishop of Rome, successor of St. Peter, in such a way that the See of Rome of St. Peter would be vacant, and an election for a new supreme pontiff would be necessary. Seems open and shut declaration that he renounced the papacy. If he actually renounced the papacy, would be end of discussion. Benedict, all he had to say is, I renounce the office of Peter. I renounce the papacy. I am no longer Pope. I will wear my black cassock and you can call me Father Ratzinger or Bishop Ratzinger. That's it. End of story. Finished. But he never did that. The resignation meets the two requirements of Canon 332, number 2.2. First, resignation must be freely made, and whatever. Well, let's actually look at Canon 332. Where is it? Code of Canon Law. Here is supreme number, the supreme authority of the church. What does it say here, friends? The Roman Pontiff, section 331. The Bishop the bishop of the Roman Church, uh, in whom continues the office given by the Lord uniquely, cannot be shared. A quasi shared ministry, quasi shared office doesn't work to Peter and his apostles. So, and who is this Bishop of Rome? He is the Vicar of Christ, which Francis relegated a historical title. The pastor of the Universal Church, Supreme Pastor, Supreme Pontiff, Supreme Pastor of the Universal Church, which again Francis Jorge relegated as a historical title. And actually Vicar of Christ, which Francis as well. Vicar of Christ, pastor, and successor of the apostles, successor of the Prince of the Apostles. Uh, Francis relegated as a historical title. He's just the Bishop of Rome. And if you remember, if you have the memory, or you can just go back and Google it, Francis always called himself simply the Bishop of Rome for years after his election. He refused to be called Pope. And even look at his documents. Pretty much at the end of it, he just says Francis. That's it. No fans, PP, no nothing. Just Francis. The administrators, the Curia at the Vatican, they have to put a title. Oh, Pope Francis says so or so. But at the actual letter of Francis, he just simply says Francis. Hey, yo, your buddy Francis in Rome, living at the Hotel Santa Marta with my buddies there. I'm not living in the papal palace because, yeah, I'm dressed in white, but am I really Pope? I don't know. Let me just say at the hotel better with my friends. All right. So Canon 331, and of course he has his Scalfari videos with his like the atheist anti-Catholic Italian Scalfari, which watch my videos on them. Anyways, so the office. So it is the office. So and through his office he has supreme full authority. So it's the office which gives him the authority. Canon 332 number 1. Again, the Pope gets his supreme power how? Through legitimate election. So if there was an illegitimate election, either through a non-resignation or through shenanigans in the election process, which did happen in Francis's election, that would render him not Pope, because you are Pope only if there was a legitimate election. Anyways, and number 2, if it happens that the Roman Pontiff, what happens? Resigns what? His ministry, his dress, his shoes, his palace? No, his office. It is required for validity, blah, blah, blah. The resignation be, be made freely, properly manifested. Well, Benedict didn't resign the office. He said, I'm resigning the ministry, and explained what the ministry is in his general audience, saying, well, actually, I'm resigning the active exercise of the ministry. I'm not resigning the ministry which I received in 2005. That's what he says. And you can double check me if you like. And then Canon 333, number 1, by virtue of his office, the Roman Pontiff, Number 2, in fulfilling the office, the Supreme Pastor of the Church, the Roman Pontiff, and so forth. So it's always the office, the office, the office, the office, the office. No, not the TV show, but the papacy. Canon 335, when the Roman see is vacant or entirely impeded. So, for those who believe Benedict was the Pope, the Roman see is vacant or impeded. Yeah, there is an administrator running things, but when he's dead, we're going to have a new Pope, because the cardinals elected were blessed by Benedict. All right, let's go back to our genius who is debunking the Benny Papist crazies, conspiracy theorists there. Yet Benny Papists object that while the canon in Latin speaks of renouncing the moon, as Benedict used the Latin word ministerium. Instead, therefore, for them, the resignation was invalid. The reply to this is that there is no required canonical formula for a papal resignation. Well, you gotta, other words, may be used, as shown in the case of Pope Celestine V, who used the Latin word for papacy. Well, yeah, which it means that they are resigning the papacy, which is the office of pope. And when Celestine V resigned, there was no code of 1984, which actually explains that you have, which is the law by which the church is currently, the Latin church is currently run. So the code of 1984, Celestine wasn't under it. But actually, if Benedict explicitly said, I'm renouncing the papacy, I am taking off my white cassock, I'm no longer Pope, don't call me Pope, I am Joseph Ratzinger, that would be valid. But the Code of Canon Law, because it means clearly that he gave up the office. It is clear, undeniable. But in case of the Benedict, the Code of Canon Law actually says explicitly you have to resign the office. Not the ministry, not the active exercise of the ministry, because I don't want to travel to South America for World Youth Day or whatever it was, stupid reason he gave. Anyways, and and actually, we're gonna get to. Hopefully, I remember it because I did a whole bunch of videos on this. So the subject, I'm like, anyway. So it's like, oh, so there's other writers like Ryan Grant and Father Richard or John Rickard who say that munus and ministeriums are synonyms. Well, yeah, that's their opinion. Well, I can always bring up my expert. Here's Father Zulsdorf, Father Z. And what does Father Z say? And I did probably a whole video on that one somewhere on my channel. The question of two popes bothers a lot of people. Some thoughts. So, what are Father Z's thoughts? I did a whole video on this, so you can probably find it on my channel. But in one of his thoughts, he says, the fact is that munus and ministerium do not mean the same thing, though they are often bound together. For example, so those are the deceivers who try you, oh, they mean the same thing. No, they are bound together, but they don't mean the same thing. For example, one carries out a certain ministry, ministerium, in the church because he holds an office, a munus. Get it? Genius, author of this garbage article. Canon law says the Pope has to resign the munus. Father Z. You can watch my video on it. I'm pretty sure I have one. And then he says, words have meaning. It is not right simply to conflate munus and ministerium as if they are interchangeable. They are closely tied to each other, but they are not synonyms. Not even close, buddy. Not even close. All right, so that puts that to rest. Thank you for the Z. Let's go back to the genius. All right, what does the genius have to tell us again? Alrighty here. Oh man, it's getting dark, and I'm getting. I hope the picture is good. Oh, whatever. See, I'm kind of summery and cool here. Cool. It's so cool. Anyways, so let's see. Uh, Ministerium. The always is always forever. So he's the one who tells us, okay, those who believe Benedict still Pope are the one twisting words when he is the one who twists the words. But okay, let's go continue here. All right. So for the Bene Papists, this paragraph is the smoking gun and the interpretive lens to understand Benedict's resignation. So he says here, the always is always forever. There can be no return to private sphere. My decision to resign the active exercise of the does not revoke this. Well, why not? There is no return to the private sphere. If you give up the office, you give up the papacy, you put on your black cassock and go retire in a monastery. You're no longer in the office of Peter. You're no longer obliged to serve the flock of Christ. You no longer have to wear white. You no longer have to live in the Vatican. You no longer have to be called Pope or Benedict as your papal name. Yeah. So no. Yeah, the always is forever. He's talking about his. There's again a video I'm talking about. I think it's called Pope Benedict says I'm ontologically Pope, because that's exactly what he tells Peter Seawald. He says, well, a Pope is being like a father. When as soon as you're a father forever. You just can't not be a father anymore. Meaning, as when I became Pope, when I took the office, I said I'm Pope forever. Maybe in a different way, but I'm Pope forever. So that's basically what Benedict himself said. Alrighty, let's see here. Um, So he says, oh man, this means all these crazy say, oh, he intended to retain the papal munus in some way. That's actually what Benedict himself says, as you will see. Benedict is referring, so what is he referring to this, uh, you know, always and forever? Benedict is referring to the loss of privacy upon becoming Pope. Well, he is no longer Pope, is he? Yeah, when you're Pope, yeah, you lose privacy. But if you resigned the papacy, if you resign the office of Pope, uh, yeah, well, you are a private man now. You can just take off and go live in a monastery. Go live in Bavaria with your brother, which you let him die by himself there. Joseph Ratzinger. Uh, upon becoming Pope is in that he belongs to the whole church as Pope. But again, now he's actually basically telling us, yeah, Benedict didn't believe he was no longer Pope because he felt obliged that he was there forever. Okay. Consequently, when Benedict says the always is always, here we are, is a forever, there can no longer be returned to private fear. He is simply saying this bond of charity will persist forever, even after his resignation. So I guess this bond of charity between Christians is supposed to last forever between everybody. Just because you're Pope, there's a bond of charity, but you're no longer Pope, you lose the bond of charity. What kind of nonsense is that? But of course, we have a genius writing this. So of course, what else do you expect? What else do you expect? So this is affirmed in his next line, saying his resignation does not revoke this. Grammatically and logically, yeah, for an insane person, this is his logic. This refers back to the privacy. Oh yeah, we'll read the article and you'll see what it refers. Theme, i.e., his resignation from the papacy does not revoke this bond of charity. Who says when a priest resigns or a bishop resigns or retires, the bond of charity is broken? This is nonsense from an idiot. Benedict would always have a heart of a father. Oh, I guess if he's no longer Pope, he loses the heart of a father again towards his sons and daughters in the church. That is why he goes on to say that even though he no longer bears the power of office for the governance, yeah, because he resigned the active exercise of the ministry. That's why he does. He, in his mind, he gave up the power of administration, but remained Pope. It's kind of like a king saying, "Well, you know what, my prime minister, you run the whole empire. I'll remain king, but I'm going to give you all the authority to run the empire. But I'm like, I'll still be the king, though." He has the heart of a father. A bunch of yeah. Okay, we're almost done here. One last note on his last audience. Bene Papus claim Benedict reference above to the active ministry indicates Benedict either intended to bifurcate the papacy, which is basically exactly what Gänswein. Here we go. Oh, the guy in purple behind me, see that? Gänswein. Gerhard Gänswein. I think that's the first name. Gerhard Gänswein himself said. Um, he expanded the Petrine ministry. He actually altered the office, as you will see. Where is it? Into the active and passive contemplative component, keeping the passive part for himself. Yeah, well, that's exactly what Benedict himself says. I'm going to dedicate myself to prayer on the enclosure of Peter, being successor of Peter, staying in Rome, being called Pope, blah, blah, blah. In reply, first, there is no such distinction or qualification of an active ministry in Benedict's instrument of resignation. Did he actually resign? The Declaratio. Well, so Benedict clearly declared he renounced the ministry of the Bishop of Rome, successor of St. Peter. No qualifications of an active ministry. Well, actually, Bobby, Benedict himself, as Pope, you will recognize him as still Pope, reigning Pope, himself interpreted the meaning of his declaratio in his last audience, which he explicitly says he renounced the active exercise and he gave up the power for governance, and that his resignation does not revoke his irrevocable acceptance of the office, which was an impossibility, as Gänswein says. So we see above, the Bene Papists do here what Protestants do in interpreting the Bible. They have taken phrases completely out of context. Yeah, okay. Whatever you say, friend. Final thoughts. Buy my book. Buy my book because it's so damn good. Buy my book. Buy my book. I'll prove you wrong. I'll prove the Benny Papers wrong. Buy my book. Buy my book. I need some money, please. Uh, as one looks at the supposed evidence brought forward by the leading Benny Papists, one thing stands out upon close examination. What? 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 Benny Papist's misuse of source material in this controversy is not isolated to the last audience. Damn them. They abuse everything. They have ignored or discounted sources that contradict them. Well, what sources? They have grossly misread or misinterpreted them. They have combined wishful thinking, poor interpretation, bad logic, and nonsensical theories. They have backed themselves, those who put their faith in their analytical powers, into the edge of an abyss. Well, actually, Jorge was accused of form of heresy by a group of theologians and priests a few years back. They actually asked bishops to condemn him for heresy. Jorge, for his Amoris Laetitia. Find it. So who's the one who was losing the faith? What's his name? Monsignor Nicola Books works for the CDF and with Benedict forever and ever, and I did a video on it. And we were talking about all the errors of Jorge, the supposed Bishop of Rome. And he says, "You look, maybe we should just." Well, he says, "Well, yeah, a pope falls from the office by adhering to heresy. He falls from the office ipso facto, you know, by the mere fact." And he says, "Well, instead of trying to figure out what to do with a pope if he fell and didn't fall from the papacy, and what do we do? Well, it's a better idea to actually have a look at the resignation of Benedict, whether it was total or partial. Wh- because this, and we should do an examination of it, because if it was partial, then it was null and void." That's Nicola Books, a very high-ranking theologian and friend of Benedict the 16th. I have a video on it, of course, as you can imagine. Um, uh, some Benepace support the 2021 declaration. I don't even know anything about that, which states that they will not recognize any future conclave in which cardinals electors created by Pope Francis take part. Well, I'm not into that camp, because that kind of will end up becoming truly sede vacantes, because there will never be a pope then. Because, as I said, every single cardinal chosen by Jorge was brought to Benedict, and Benedict approved it. Like in the picture behind me, every single cardinal election, they were brought to Benedict, knelt before Benedict, received Benedict's blessing. Therefore, Benedict approved, certified by Pope Benedict. So, so you shouldn't create more division for no reason. Um, It is well past time for leading Bene Papists to come to grips with the reality of their claims, that their claims do not withstand close scrutiny. Look who's talking. Look who's talking two. Look who's talking three. And step back from the brink of schism. As if Francis gives a hoot about schism. Uh, he loves the Orthodox. He loves Lutherans. He loves out and out heretics and out and out perverts who promote perversion and disgusting sexual acts. He actually promotes their promoter on Twitter. Here, the priest who has nothing to talk about other than the misuse of the sexual organs. Uh, he promoted him, I think, in the Vatican by Jorge. He promotes evil. He loves evil. He loved the anti-Catholic atheist Scalfari. You're talking about schism and error and faith. Okay, talk to Francis first. Um, in which is a mortal sin. Oh my God! Schism against who? A heretic? Anyways, well, I'm not. I'm just. I'll go to any masses, real masses, with whether Jorge is mentioned or not. Hey, God is there. Sacrifice is offered. Of course, I try to avoid the fake, fabricated Novus Ordo new liturgical innovation of the new rite, as Paul VI himself declared, but actually say at the apostolic liturgies, which is a mortal sin and a canonical offense. Oh my God, the canonical offense. Now he cares about what canon law says, even though canon law says a pope must resign the office. But that doesn't matter. But in this case, you if you offend Jorge, you are schismatic, incurring automatic excommunication. Ooh. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stephen O'Reilly. O'Reilly, for your genius. Oh, wither Benny papism. All right, so let's finalize that little thingy here. Finish it up. Uh, all right, so here's because Benedict and Gänswein are hand in hand. Here is Gänswein again behind him, the guy in purple. He was with Benedict till the last day, till his death, and he knows exactly the meaning of what Benedict says. But let's start with Benedict himself. Then we're going to go to Gänswein, and that'll be all, boys and girls. All right. So Benedict XVI, general audience, after his declaratio, where he said he's renouncing the ministry of the Bishop of Rome, but not the Vicar of Christ or the successor of St. Peter. Anyways, let's ignore that. So it's Wednesday. Again, I dwelt on these in much more detail in other videos, but we'll do it kind of short here. Go to the important parts. When on 19 April, nearly 8 years ago, I accepted the Petrine ministry. He accepted the Petrine ministry 19 April. He continues, here, allow me to go back once again to 19 April 2005. The real gravity of the decision to renounce the ministry was also due to the fact that from that moment on, from 19 April 2005, from that moment on, he was engaged always and forever by the Lord. What do you mean? He wasn't engaged always and forever when he was a priest or a bishop or a cardinal. No. He's being specific that it is when he was elected, when he accepted the papal office. He was engaged always and forever. He's specific about that. Always. Anyone who accepts the Petrine ministry is no longer has any privacy. But supposedly, if you give up the Petrine ministry, you would have privacy, right, Benedict? He belongs always and completely to everyone, to the whole church, if he is in the office as Pope, yes. But otherwise, no. So this is the privacy thing. He said. The always is also a forever that can no longer be returned to the private sphere. Why not? If you actually resigned the office, if you actually resigned the papacy, you become a private. You gave up the office of the papacy. So in a sense, you return to the private sphere. What's holding you back? Wear your black cassock. And they asked him when he resigned, why don't you wear your black cassock? He said, well, I couldn't find one in the Vatican. Oh, he couldn't find a black cassock in the Vatican. And that was a joke, actually. The decision now here explains exactly what his declaratio meant. Benedict as Pope, as still reigning, even according to the genius who authored the article. My decision to resign what? The ministry? No. The office? No. Which was always from forever, engaged always and forever, in April 19th, 2005? Nope. It is to resign what? The active exercise of the ministry, of the office. So his decision to resign the active exercise of the office does not revoke this, which is the always and forever, which he got at the moment of his acceptance of the office in April 19th, 2005, because that's what he's talking about. I'm not abandoning the cross. I mean, it's, meaning I'm not going to read into it, but really it's the office. But remaining in a new way at the side of the crucified. I no longer bear the power of office. See, he doesn't say I no longer bear. I no longer have the office. I will no longer have the office. Period. No, he says I no longer bear what? the power of office. Why? What? Of the governance. Oh, where's? Oh, no, sorry. Yeah. I no longer bear the power of office for the governance of the church, but so so I no longer bear the power of office for the governance of the church, but I meanings I bear the power office for the service of prayer. I remain, so to speak, in the enclosure of Saint Peter, meaning in the office of Saint Peter. And listen to this. This is again, he mentioned it in the article, The Genius. Saint Peter, Saint Benedict, whose name I bear as Pope. Saint Benedict, whose name I bear as Pope, till the day he died as Pope. Till the day he died, he was called Benedict, buried in the papal crypt in the Vatican. He will be a great example for me. He showed us in a way of the way for a life which, whether active or passive, the same life is completely given over to the work of God. And then he says, "Well, okay, now we have room for a new successor of the Apostle Peter, who will be the active exercise, who will do the active exercise." But again, if you understand what he means, again, he wanted to expand the ministry. So this is what Benedict himself, as still reigning Pope, explains. So, and let's finish up with Gänswein, the complete English text, Archbishop Gänswein's expanded Petrine office, the Petrine office, and that's exactly what it, in the new translation, instead of ministry, they call it office in a book. Go find it on Amazon. Anyways, I went through this article many times in different videos to explain certain things. So anyways, we're going to get to the heart of the matter for this genius who wrote the thing on 1 Peter 5. The momentous, so this is Gänswein, reviewing actually a book by a man called Rigoli, I think. Anyways, the momentous resignation of the theologian Pope, meaning Benedict, represents a step forward, primarily by the fact that on February 11th, 2013, speaking in Latin, in front of the surprised cardinals, he introduced into the Catholic Church, which he has no power to do, because it's divine structure of the church cannot be changed by anybody, not even a pope, the new institution. So Benedict introduced out of thin air, out of the top of his head, the new institution of Pope Emeritus. So there was no such thing as Pope Emeritus ever before. All right. So listen to this. Before and after his resignation, Benedict understood and understands his task as what? Being a private person praying as a monk? No, as participation in such a Petrine office, Petrine ministry. Benedict left the papal throne, and yet, with the step taken in February 11th, 2013, he has not at all abandoned what? This ministry, this office. Instead, he has complemented the personal office with a collegial and synodal dimension as a quasi-shared office, a quasi-shared ministry. There you go. I mean, this is Gänswein, a guy behind Benedict and the guy in purple there. Since the election of his successor, Francis, on March 13th, 2013, there are not therefore two popes, but de facto an expanded office. In the translation of the book, it actually uses the word office instead of ministry, an expanded ministry. I mean, it's obviously what it means. With an active member and a contemplative member. Now he explains why is Benedict still wearing white? Oh, it's a mystery. Why is he still living in the Vatican? Why is he still called Pope? Why is he called Holiness? Well, because he never gave up the papacy. He never gave up the office of Peter. Let's see what Gänswein says. Since his election, okay, because there's an expanded ministry, an active and a contemplative member. This is why Benedict XVI has not given up his name, his papal name, Benedict, or his white cassock. This is why The correct name by which to address him even today is Your Holiness. And this is also why he has not retired to a secluded monastery, but within the Vatican, as if he had only taken a step to the side, not down from his office, no, to make room for his successor in a new stage in the history of the papacy, which he wanted to invent out of thin air. Okay. And he continues 35 years later, he, Benedict, has not abandoned the office of Peter, meaning he remained Pope and remained in the office. Therefore, how can there be an election for Francis? You know, what does the Joker say? Oh, riddle me this. Oh, the Riddler, riddle me this, Batman. Riddle me this, Batman. 35 years later, he has not abandoned the office of Peter. Okay, then. Something which would have been entirely impossible for him after his irrevocable acceptance of the office in April 2005. Do I need to even say more? Do I even need to say more? As an act of extraordinary courage, he has instead renewed the office. He's going to renovate it, make up a new thing, expand it, invent stuff. But in this history of the church, but in the history of the church, it shall remain true that in the year 2013, the famous theologian on the throne of Peter became history's first Pope Emeritus. There was no such thing before that. Since this, his role, allow me to repeat it once again, especially to the genius who wrote the article on 1 Peter 5, is entirely different from that of, for example, of the Holy Pope Celestine, who actually resigned the papacy. And that is Gänswein, the guy in purple right there behind me. You should read the whole article. And actually, I was about to forget before we do that. Actually, oh man, sorry, picking my nose in front of you guys, picking my noses. There was I think it was 2014, an article written by Stefano Violi, the resignation of Benedict XVI between history, law, and conscience. You might be able to find it online if you look hard enough. And he's in the theological faculty of Emilia Romagna, Faculty of Theology, Lugano. And that was in 2013 or 2014, 2013 or 2014. So he goes through the whole history of papal resignations and how they came to be. And no pope or bishop ever resigned. I mean, they were deposed for heresy, for example. But resignation because I'm old, that's a total innovation of Paul VI. So historical precedents. So he goes through, I don't know how many pages that thing is. Quite a few. How many pages? Anyway, quite a few. I'm just going to skip all the way to the conclusion of his long study. So I think I might have gone through this years ago. Maybe I'll do another video on it, but whatever. Those who want to think can think, those who don't want to think, they're happy with their stupidity. All right. So in conclusion, so page 9, so 8 pages of basically telling you everything Benedict is going to do is not in full harmony, but he calls it in full harmony with tradition when it's not, just to be nice. But what is his conclusion after his big, long history of the papacy and resignations and the words used and Boniface the whatever he was, 5th or 15th, whatever, the Boniface, and Pope Celestine and Pope Innocent, and it's a big long article. Anyways, what's the conclusion? On February 11th, 2013, in full harmony with the tradition of the church, which he actually spent 9 pages saying it's never not in harmony with the tradition of the church. It doesn't matter. Let's ignore that. Benedict XVI declared his renunciation of the Petrine ministry. Concerning this diktat of the canon, canon law, however, he declared his renunciation not of the office, but of its administration. Not of the office, but of its. This is a canon law doctor. Okay, a renunciation limited to what? The active exercise of the office of the munus constitute the absolute novelty. How can it be in harmony with tradition when it is the absolute novelty of the resignation of Benedict XVI? The juridical base of this is not then the Canon 233 number 2 or 332. They were number 2 governs the renunciation of the office, different from those that pronounced by Benedict XVI. So, anyways, basically says, well, Benedict XVI had the power, plenitude of power, so basically do whatever he wants to do. But basically, his conclusion: Benedict did not resign the office, but the administration, the active exercise of the office, its administration. That's the limited resignation of Benedict XVI. So if you can find this article, here it is by Stefano Violi. I downloaded it and saved it, so it's never disappeared on me, because things like that tend to disappear, you know. The resignation of Benedict XVI between history, law, and conscience. Close that one. That maybe I'm afraid to close it and shut down the whole thing. And last but not least, I'll push my channel again. Anyways, so I have like a ton of videos just on the Pope. Even Cardinal Burke commented to like, oh, yeah, the stuff Benedict said on his little thingy. Um, his audience, there's some weird stuff there. Yeah, I know, but anyways, you can watch it, read it, decide what you decide. For me, this makes no difference because I'm just sick and tired of listening to the garbage coming out of the mouth of Francis. It's almost embarrassing to call him a Pope of the Catholic Church. But, anyways, he's an old man. His day is coming. He doesn't live forever. And he'll be looking in the eyes of Christ the King for his personal judgment. And let's be nice and let's hope he actually converts before he dies. And that's it. That's all. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, and share. And give me a billion thumbs up because look at me. I'm wearing a cool white shirt today. Look, I'm white. We got the 2 men in white. Here's the 3rd man in white and the guy in purple. All right. That's it. That's all. See you next time. Bye bye.